功！同志们、先生们，谢谢。
We communists have struggled for a cultural revolution, as well as for a political and economic revolution, and our aim is to build a new society and a new state for the Chinese nation. That new society and new state will have not only a new politics and a new economy, but a new culture. In other words, not only do we want it to change a China that is politically oppressed and economically exploited into a China that is politically free and economically prosperous. We also want to change the China which is being kept ignorant and backward under the sway of the old culture into an enlightened and progressive China under the sway of a new culture.
Much like the Soviet Union, China was far behind the West in terms of economy. And like the USSR, China seeks to catch up to the West by transforming their agrarian society into an industrial one, thus creating rapid industrialization to move into a socialist society. This was called the Great Leap Forward.
爱俄的关键是瓜五分啊，为啥说是中国第一次爱俄呢？俺也摸不清楚。瓜五分就是不让吃，不让吃就饿，有氧好坏都抬过去，我也抬过去。粮食全都放置在食堂，让你老老实实吃，哪里吃得饱，不饿就算好了。有的都不给吃，那2年饿，什么都没有。
Mao's political policy centered upon the consolidation of central authority through propaganda and repression to carry out a thought reform. Anyone who threatened this vision was purged or sent to re-education camps. I was a member of the Gang of Four and was mainly in charge of the propaganda ministry. We initiated events such as the 100 Flowers movement and numerous self-criticism sessions, compelling the cadres to constantly reflect upon their mistakes and point out those of their colleagues. I remember there was 6,000 self-criticism sessions in 1956 alone in Shanghai. We suppressed any signs of reactionaries, including professors and former KMT officials, constantly reminding the people that we are struggling against bureaucracy and reactionaries. To fully direct the people's mind, the CPP sent 20,000 cadres into units, communes, and schools to monitor the people. Propagandist tools used also to include the People's Daily Newspaper, the Little Red Book, and the Central Broadcast. Since I was young, I was always interested in the arts, and as I grew up, I pursued further education in the arts. However, among the chaos of the Cultural Revolution, my parents were scared that I would be entangled in the political struggle. Thus, they gathered all their money and sent me to Canada. I was grateful that I could escape because all people in the field of arts, sciences, and research were purged. I remember that my arts teacher was sent to the countryside to farm until the revolution ended, during the Down to the Countryside movement. Now that I am back in my home country after the chaos, I noticed so many changes. The temple my parents and I used to visit was in ruins. The Cultural Revolution was indeed a destruction of the Chinese culture and traditions.
Die große Zeit ist jetzt angebrochen. Deutschland ist nun erwacht. Die Macht haben wir nun in Deutschland gewonnen. Nun gilt es, das deutsche Volk zu gewinnen. Ich weiß es, meine Kameraden, es ist euch wohl oft schwer gefallen, wenn ihr meint, es müsse nun ein Wandel kommen. Und er kann nicht und immer wieder muss der euch Appell gerichtet werden. Es muss weitergekämpft werden, denn es geht nicht. Ihr dürft nicht handeln, ihr müsst gehorchen, ihr müsst euch fügen, ihr müsst euch diesen unerhörten Zwang beugen. Was uns jahrelang als Traumbild vorschwebte, ist Wirklichkeit geworden. das Symbol der Klasseneinigung des deutschen Volkes ist das Symbol des neuen Reiches geworden und damit Panier des deutschen Volkes. Der kostbarste Besitz auf dieser Welt aber ist das eigene Volk. Und für dieses Volk und um dieses Volk wollen wir ringen und wollen wir kämpfen und niemals erlahmen und niemals ermüden und niemals verzagen und niemals verzweifeln.
Hitler's aim for his economic policies was to ensure that Germany was strengthened in accordance with their plans for military conquests, aka to win the next total war and establish German autarky separate from Western support, like they did in Weimar Germany, and to isolate themselves from the international economic system. Hitler didn't have a real interest in economic policy as long as the economy allowed him to subject the civilians to his political and social policies, so Schacht was appointed Minister of Economics until Göring controlled German economic and production matters. So Schacht established the Reichsbank and issued banknotes to stimulate trade with the Balkan nations as a form of recovery. However, this economic miracle was only temporary, as in 1939 the debt increased to 37.4 billion Reichsmarks. These efforts at autarky was a reliance only on domestic goods hurt the overall standard of living for Germans. As well, Schacht abolished trade unions and established the German Labor Fund, so there was no collective bargaining, no freedom of movement. They banned strikes, sacks, and lockouts, and it was essentially the nationalization of independent labor movement, which was a fraud, as it made workers believe that the government represented them when in fact it really didn't. There was also more power given to the industrialists. So 1.4% of German government revenue between fiscal year 34 and 35 to 37 and 38 was the privatization of social welfare organizations and German railways and United Steelworks, etc. There was also rearmament as an economic policy, which was just to create more job positions in manufacturing weapons and supplying raw materials. So Schacht's new plan, industrial production went up to 50% since 1933, and Germany still needed to import raw materials for its rearmament. However, the cost of these products were increasing, and Germany's reserve of gold and foreign currency were declining. However, Göring soon came up with the four-year plan, and Hermann Göring Works was a collection of iron ore companies taking control of all privately owned steelworks in order to enact this. It was designed to make Germany's economy and military forces to be a war in 4 years' time. And in 1936, 10% of all the GNP was military industries, and it was a call to the world to be the world's first army in terms of fighting power. So from 1936, Nazis were able to prioritize their plans for military expansion through investing money in research development. And 50% of all this industrial investment in the German economy was 1940 went into this research. This gave Nazis greater influence over most economic sectors, and they focused heavily on industries that are rearmament related, such as motor transport and aircraft companies. And this was all meant to support the Lebensraum.
Hello, I am the mother of 9 children under Hitler's regime. I know our leader followed a social policy based on Volksgemeinschaft, in which he would try to restore traditional German values in their community. I think he believed in 2 basic educational ideas for his ideal state. Firstly, I think to him there must be burnt into the brain and the heart of youth the sense of race, and in particular, Aryan race. And this is why he encouraged mothers to have birth for their children and encourage growing population. Second, German must be made ready for war and educated for victory and death. I think this is the kind of education my sons and daughter, my sons in particular, received. And everything in our lives were based on the 3 Ks called kitchen, children, church. Because I know our country or nation has lost 2.8 million of lives in World War I, there was a falling birth rate from 1.9 million to 1.1 million. And because of this, our leader wanted to strengthen the Aryan master race and encouraged births in the form of banning abortions. And on top of this, He also wanted to instill the idea of good Christian woman, and this is where the church comes from. However, though, ultimately, German women were more likely to be at home and give birth to children, take care of the family, restore traditional German values than the time in 1938 than the time we were in a few years back. And this is the policy our Führer Hitler followed.